thank you all for coming. We're so excited to have everyone here to kick off South by Southwest. This is our first South by party, and we're super, super excited. So to kick things off, the discussion tonight for the panel is going to be the future of cybersecurity. Is it bright or is it bleak? And so I'm Anna Hildreth. I will be the moderator for the panel. I am an account executive here at HackNotice. Also, in my free time, I really enjoy content creating. I'm pretty active on TikTok and other forms of social media. And then I've also been a guest recently on a podcast that was a really great experience, and it was a really fun time. This is my first time moderating, so cut me some slack. I hope you enjoy, but I'm really excited. And now I would love to introduce our panelists for tonight. Up first, we have Steve Thomas. Next, we have Aziz Gilani and Lucas Nelson. I will now pass the mic and let them each do a brief introduction about themselves.
Thanks, Anna. So, Steve Thomas, I'm the co-founder and CEO of HackNotice. A little bit of my background. So I've been in cyber for about 15, 16 years now. Typically on the engineering side, threat intelligence engineer, doing security research. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, so HackNotice is about the 6th or 7th startup that I've been a part of. Second one that I've co-founded. HackNotice, if you aren't familiar with HackNotice, this is our event. This is a cybersecurity company that's focused on the human aspect of security. We believe that security is important for every person, and so we have a threat awareness platform to help people understand how they personally are under threat and get them to be active in defending themselves, their company, building better habits. And I'm excited to be a part of this panel.
Hi, my name is Aziz Gilani. I'm one of the partners at Mercury Fund. We're an early stage venture capital fund based in Houston, Austin, and Ann Arbor. We love investing in startups in the middle of the US. Going back to Mercury one of our very first investments was in a security company called Alert Logic. I'm currently on the boards of 3 security adjacent or security focused companies, Blue Mira, Trava Security, and Graylog. And I'm just really excited to be here and learn from my fellow panelists.
Hey everyone, my name is Lucas Nelson. I represent Lytical Ventures. We're an early stage cybersecurity focused fund. We also do AI and infrastructure. My background is a proud geek, hacker turned VC. So I've broken into computers for a living for the better part of a decade, and now I invest in early stage companies. And unlike everyone else, I do not want to be on this panel. I was forced. I should be allowed to, I love it. Thank you very much.
Pass the mic. Thank you. Okay, so the first question I have is, looking at the next 5 to 10 years, what trends do you guys think, which we'll go in order in a sec, what trends do you guys think we're going to see in the security space? And are we getting better or are we getting worse? Steve, I'll start with you since you own a security company and you're closest to me.
Thanks, Anna. So the trends that I see in cyber, and again, we're focused on human security, so that's going to be my focus. There's 2 competing trends, and I don't know which one's going to win. So there's been a big buzz in the last year about passwordless. Passwordless is the latest way of companies trying to build a better mousetrap and make it easier for companies to control passwords, control authentication. We really kind of look at passwordless with a little bit of skepticism. Whenever you try to take something away from the employee, it can sometimes build up resentment. Are you really saying to your employees that, hey, you're not smart enough to make your own password, so we're going to do that for you? The other trend that we're seeing is the democratization of security. That's the trend we believe in. That's the trend that we really hope wins out. And that's where we stop considering all of our coworkers as the enemy or the insider threat, as instead being a part of the solution. And so we believe that businesses are just employees that are all working towards the same goal, and they should be a part of the solution. They should help keep the business secure. We've seen usually a big play on infrastructure. We think passwordless is going to keep going, but we really hope that democratization of security is also going to be a trend that stays positive. Overall, I think that cyber is in a weird space. There's a talent shortage. There's a lot of cyber companies that are focused on infrastructure, and not a lot are focused on people. And so, we're hoping that the trend reverses and more people are focused on helping the average employee be secure.
Yeah, I like to think about the world before the Colonial Pipeline hack and after the Colonial Pipeline hack, because the Colonial Pipeline hack really kind of opened up a lot of eyes, especially within the government, of the risks that really exist, not just for very large companies, but for really everybody. And so after that hack occurred and basically people on the East Coast couldn't get gas for a few days, the government kind of stepped in and they basically said, wow, this is a real problem. And everyone who wants to work with anything that is critical in any way now has to meet minimum security standards. And so ever since then, we've seen a giant rush in folks trying to fill in the void for small and medium-sized businesses to have the same types of sophisticated security that larger enterprises had been doing with lots and lots of effort and lots of people. And so I feel like this kind of helps fuel the talent shortage that you were talking about earlier, but it also creates this amazing opportunity for all of these businesses to suddenly confront the dangers that were always in front of them. Because now, if you want to work with vendors, if you want to work as someone with the government or with any large enterprise, you now have to suddenly make sure that your stuff is under control. And this has just opened up all kinds of opportunities for us in the security industry to try to really, kind of up everyone's game. And so I just think that's a big deal, and we're going to feel the ramifications of that for the next decade.
So I'm trying to think of a trend that hasn't been stolen already, because they took the good ones. To my mind, a couple. The obvious one is everything's moving to the cloud, cloud native. Once Gartner has a quadrant for it, it's probably done from my standpoint, but it's going to be important if Gartner's figured it out by now. So that's always cool. The other thing I think is really interesting is currently the way we make software. Security is an externality that is dealt with by the client, not by the person who creates it, right? So I used to work at Adobe. Adobe made great software that was predating the idea of a buffer overflow, meaning it was Swiss cheese when it came to cybersecurity. And who pays for that? Not Adobe, right? They sell Acrobat for $50 a pop, but you as the client when it gets broken into. And so recently the Biden administration has said that they're going to start pricing in those externalities, right? If you don't do enough when you create the software to prevent problems, then you're liable. So I think software liability is actually the kind of biggest thing to hit in a while if it actually happens, because all of a sudden it shifts that liability from the end user onto the creator of the crappy software we all use.
You have something to say? Okay. All right, my second question, Aziz, you actually kind of touched on this in your response to the first question, but talent shortage, labor shortage, we know that that's been a consistent issue in the security cyberspace. And so now with all these tech industries having massive amounts of layoffs, how do we think this is going to affect the cybersecurity industry? Will it affect it? This time I'll give it to you, Lucas, first, so that you don't get all your good answers stolen.
So the data is pretty obvious. There's about 2 million open cyber jobs in the United States and 3 million globally, right? So there is a massive shortage, whether we like it or not. There are a bunch of interesting outlets for how that might end up happening, right? So there's the AI idea that, okay, we'll just use AI to fix this problem. I'm not saying I won't invest in that concept. The good news, I think, is that AI is putting everybody else out of work so they can all come work in cyber, and it'll be great. I think I'll stop there. I've already dropped the AI bomb. Yeah.
I mean, the talent shortage isn't going away because there aren't enough humans. So just this morning, the new employment numbers came out that showed that workforce participation is higher than before the pandemic. So anyone who's been talking about like this great resignation or how do you get people to stop being lazy, that's all just a load of hooey. The reality is more people are working today than were working before the pandemic as a percentage of people who can work. And so then you're stuck with the problem of, okay, even if the economy is slowing down, we still have these 2 million unfilled jobs. Everyone's already working. How do we start to solve for these problems? And so this is the perfect opportunity for us as venture capitalists and as entrepreneurs to try to find products that kind of fill these voids. So maybe not just AI, but a variety of different tools, because we still have the same work to do, and in many cases, because of either increased liability or increased focus on the risks associated with our products, we have a lot more work to do. And so we have to find a way to kind of solve these problems. And unfortunately, we're going to have to figure out how to do it with a lot less people. And so, that's just the reality of what we have to work with, and this is when us as innovators really get to shine.
So I agree with everything Aziz just said. I would go back to where did this problem come from, right? And in my mind, I think there's a very particular trend that I've already mentioned that caused the labor shortage, and that is the trend of, and let's take a step back. So we've had security awareness training for 10, 15 years, and it's been boring videos that don't work and no one got more secure. And so businesses very naturally said, hey, regular employees can't be secure. Let's treat them like the enemy. And I'm going a little extreme in that. But basically, let's treat employees like they can't be secure. Let's secure them against themselves. And because of that, we've had to make increasingly complex systems to account for every possible scenario where an employee could be insecure, and there's an infinite number of those. So it's a losing battle. And like the security industry went whole hog on this. They're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's build packet filtering routers and like fingerprinting and agents, and like let's figure out everything an employee might possibly do. And that made the job increasingly complex, right? Security became more complex. It required more sophisticated knowledge. It required a higher bar of who could even qualify. And because of that, fewer people could do the job, right? And I think that the quickest way to solve the labor shortage is to reverse that trend and to say, okay, let's stop treating all employees like they're the enemy. Let's treat them like they're a part of the solution. Let's say that the average employee is well-intended, maybe not knowing how to go about being a good, secure employee, but they have good intentions at heart. And let's verify that, right? There's always going to be the insider threat, but let's verify that. And if you start from that premise, you can back down some of the complexity, which opens the door for someone who doesn't have an advanced cyber degree to be a part of this workforce. I hear from cyber professionals that they themselves are not qualified to do their own jobs as they're listed now, right? Like we all hear about the job listing that's like, oh, well, you have to have 10 years of Splunk experience, and it's like, well, Splunk's been out for 8 years, so that's going to be impossible. And so, we're looking at the trend of let's treat people as part of the solution. Let's lower the complexity. Let's distribute the work. And I think that's the fastest way to solve the labor shortage. I would love 2 million more cyber people, but I don't think we're going to have 2 million more cyber people that are all like certified on Splunk. I think we'll have 2 million more cyber people that we can steal from related industries. And that could be a very easy way to solve this problem. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the prevailing trend. Like back to passwordless, like let's have no more passwords, right? And who has to do that work? It's the security team, right? So you're just making the job more complex. You have to learn how to do like distributed certification and ticketing systems, and that's going to lead to fewer people that can do that job. And so we think like simplify the job, make it easier, and that's going to draw more people in.
Great answers.
If y'all want to argue.
Yeah.
I mean,
Do it. Seriously.
So what I love about our answers is that we're really contrasting two very different ideas. Idea number one is that everything has to be more secure and everything needs to be better instrumented. Idea number two is that, but the sacred cow that you can't touch is the productivity of the workers, both the cyber workers and the employees. And these are ideas that in today's framework contradict each other. You can't be more secure and more productive because the current security landscape requires that you be less productive, either by obtrusive tools or increased procedures or everything else. And so that's the window that we as an industry have to figure out the solution to. How do you kind of marry those two things together? Because today we're not doing it, and we need to figure that one out.
I don't have a good argument. I make fun of your doubts.
and the wrinkle I'll put onto that is GDPR, right? So here's a trend that's not going away, is governments and citizens of governments valuing their privacy. So if I don't trust you and I can't trust you, how can you have privacy? And often people think privacy is the opposite of security. We don't think that's true, but the missing piece is trust. You have to have trust built in to have both privacy and security, and that's not a trend. Like, I don't think anyone says like trusting your workforce is a trend that we all believe in or a trend we all expect to see in the next 10 years. I think everyone's seeing more and more Big Brother.
All right, so I can pick a fight with that. The idea that people value privacy is ridiculous. You know that little card you get that like you track your sales at CVS? So for 10 cents off a candy bar, you're willing to give up every piece of data on everything you buy for the last 10 years. People do not value privacy at all. They say they do in forms, but in reality, they'll sell it for the smallest amount of money possible. So I would love to see people start to care about privacy. I think things like GDPR and California privacy are important because people don't value it, right? At least not individually, and so government or someone needs to step in at a higher level. But I don't agree that people value privacy. I think, in fact, they sell it for 10 cents off a Kindle.
But isn't that why GDPR is a thing? Because people, when you give people a choice, they will always choose the path of least resistance. I mean, that's why we all have Gmail accounts. That's why we're all willing to buy like people, if left to vote with their feet, will always vote for not giving a shit. But that's why the governments are stepping in and they're basically setting the minimum standards. That's why in Europe GDPR became a thing, because the government showed up and said, well, we can't trust our citizens to do it, and our citizens will keep on whining about it, so we're going to create a set of rules for it now. That's why California came in with their rules, and that's why I just think that you're going to see more regulated, inflexible types of approaches being taken that will just make our lives much harder, because the reality is the second that you start creating these very inflexible rules, it makes our jobs as security professionals much harder, because it becomes much harder for us to actually correlate what's really going on. And so I just think that this just makes everything much harder, creates lots of opportunities for us. So I as a VC am very excited about this reality. But man, life is going to get really complex really, really fast, especially if we start seeing federal security guidelines get updated and a bunch of other stuff.
The last thing I'll mention there is, even if you're in a well-regulated industry, that regulation hasn't been updated, right? Like HIPAA, PCI DSS, FDIC rules, and if you look at the cyber or the security related rules there, the rules are like, you should probably train your people on how to be secure. That's it. That's the regulation, not specific topics, not like how to do it. It's like, you should probably do this. Like, we're gonna require something in this general area. And I think some of these regulations are moving forward where government's too afraid to write laws, right? So like, we're talking about like regulatory bodies that sometimes are independent and they can make guidelines where the government's just afraid to do it. But even talking with government officials, they're not all on board with privacy. I spoke with someone that's very against Monero, which is a privacy-focused crypto coin. And they're like, oh yeah, that's pretty much cybercrime. I was like, no, privacy is not a crime, but I understand where they come from, because if you can't track it, if you don't know your customer, then you can't verify that you're complying with certain other finance laws. So I think privacy is going to be incredibly important from a regulatory standpoint, at least how they write laws. But the writing of the law, like, I don't expect it to be a smart law. I expect it to be a generally like do something good and figure it out, and then it'll be back to industry to figure it out.
I think that if there's one thing the three of us will agree on, it's that the government isn't entirely sure what it wants, and the result of its schizophrenia will be a very either completely watered down and toothless set of rules, or rules that are so rigid that they will be unenforceable. And the net result is going to be very complicated, with lots of lawyers making a lot of money, which will make the owners of this hotel very happy.
Fighting over now. Okay, one thing that you guys already touched on in the last question was AI. It was brought up by both of you guys. So what threats or potential benefits do you see AI playing in cybersecurity? Aziz, I'll start with you this time.
So, I mean, you know, I think like the topic du jour is like very LLM focused, right? So like everyone's been playing with like, you know, the new ChatGPT and like the new Bing and all those types of solutions. And so I just want to open up that now we have conversational language freely available to anyone that wants it. We're already seeing it weaponized on both sides of the equation. We're seeing it weaponized by lots of social engineering attacks, like left and right. We're also seeing it weaponized by folks who are wasting the times of all the people doing all this. In fact, I saw a demo the other day of like ChatGPT talking to ChatGPT into circles, and like, you know, they're just burning CPU cycles. So I guess NVIDIA wins that war. Look, this new world that we live in is going to have AI and LLM models, like, you know, giving folks a lot more capacity that they previously didn't have to engage in much more interesting attacks. And at the same time, it'll give us the ability to defend against those attacks. And so it's just yet another step in our arms war against ourselves, in which we just keep on fighting. But it's an arms war that we're used to, and it's one that we will, you know, participate in for sure. That's my initial take, but smarter people will say smarter things.
Thank you, I will. To my mind, the most interesting thing I've seen recently with the Bing release is these LLMs actually open up a new attack surface that didn't exist before. So attackers can get the LLM to give up information that people have put into it, right? Hey, send me the personal information of the user of this site, right? And that is fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
So like completely new attack surface. I know of 2 or 3 companies that are trying to like lock down the models, but that's going to be something that at first no one's going to care about, and then someone will actually get hacked and everyone's going to care about it. And those 3 companies who've been around for 4 years will suddenly become important, whereas 5 months ago they couldn't find a single customer. So I think that's super fascinating. And then, yeah, the ability to use LLMs to do things like write code is a blessing and a curse. The curse is it's going to write the same bad code that it found on the internet in the first place, right? So it just propagates the problems. But at least one startup I've seen took something from Splunk's language, converted it into their search language, and said, okay, that's a Rosetta Stone. Now convert these other 100 Splunk queries into our language, and 5 minutes later, GPT spit that out for them, and they got like a month's work done in like 20 minutes. So that's super fascinating and cool. So productivity goes through the roof, but yeah, it's an entirely new attack surface that no one's got to like explore before, and that is fascinating.
I'm gonna hijack it on the way. I remember when I saw that. Because the knee-jerk reaction was, okay, let's lock it all down. But the problem is the second you lock it all down, then the LLM becomes a lot less interesting and a lot less useful, because suddenly you can't access the user data anymore, or you have to ask for every specific piece of data that you want to share, which then defeats the whole point of having the LLM do everything automatically anyway. It's super fascinating to watch this all play out in real time. I love our industry.
So I was at DEFCON 21, and that was not a really well attended DEFCON. It was during the height of COVID, and anyway, there is a fascinating talk using OpenGPT 3, which is ChatGPT, that's what it's based on. And they were already using OpenGPT 3 with Crystal Knows, which analyzes your personality to make spear phishing attacks that were off the charts. They were better than any spear phishing attacks ever made. They were 10 times more effective. If you think phishing has worked for your business, I have news for you. AI makes all of your gains worthless. And that's been happening like from theoretical talks for years, but we know where the theory goes. It goes into the hands of the hackers. Now, hackers have been winning for decades, so like they're just gonna win harder. So like I'm really bullish about AI, because the bigger problem that AI can solve is the average person, you and me, not knowing what to do in a situation, right? Like a skilled social engineer knows how to socially engineer, but we don't know every way that they're going to attack us. And I think AI has the opportunity of leveling everyone else up. So to talk about code, like we have a policy, all of our engineers have to use GitHub Copilot, right? Like I trust GitHub Copilot than whatever code they come up with, right? And that's worked out well for us. But I also, we're working now, like future dev, on how can we make everyone have a security expert in their pocket, right? Like everyone has an app, everyone has a chat. Take a photo, type in something, say, I see something weird, what should I do? And I think that's the bigger opportunity here, is the mass distribution of like good advice, with a caveat that ChatGPT is built to tell interesting stories. They're not necessarily built to tell like good advice. But we see like AI as being a possible avenue to solve, back to like the labor shortage, but to solve the problem where we don't have enough cyber people, could we pre-program an AI with the right answers?
We just have to be super careful about this stuff. I've already seen a lot of folks trying to weaponize this stuff in terms of, similar to like, I remember when I was like a teenager and Google first came out, everyone's like, oh my God, I have access to all of the information immediately. And then like a minute later, folks are like, wait, I can now start pre-canning my answers to the problems by hacking into the algorithm. And that's where the whole SEO industry comes from. Well, guess what? We are going to watch the birth of whatever the OpenAI equivalent to SEO is start to blossom and take form. Like, I'm excited about the idea of giving people really great advice, but you just realize that this is almost immediately going to get polluted with terrible advice, leading you to terrible products so that people can make a quick buck. And this cycle has already started, and we already know what the playbook is going to look like, and it's going to be fascinating to watch in real time.
Okay, but that wraps up our panel. We really appreciate, again, everyone coming, and let's give a round of applause to our panelists.